You die tonight. Maybe it's a car crash on your way home. Maybe it's a blood clot that's been traveling through your body for days, finally reaching your brain. Or maybe it's something more mundane. You simply go to sleep and never wake up. Whatever the cause, your consciousness blinks out of existence like a candle in a sudden breeze. Except, it doesn't. According to the quantum suicide theory, you never experience your own death. Not really. Instead, your consciousness always, inevitably, inexorably shifts to the timeline where you survive. In the multiverse of quantum possibilities, there's always at least one branch where you continue existing, and your consciousness automatically flows there. Meanwhile, everyone else experiences the reality where you died. They mourn, they move on. But you, the you that is reading these words right now, continue in a parallel track, unaware that in countless other universes, you're already a memory. The philosopher Max Tegmark wasn't trying to disturb our collective peace of mind when he proposed this thought experiment. He was merely following quantum mechanics to its logical, if unsettling, conclusion. If every quantum event creates branch points, splitting reality into multiple timelines, then there must always be a timeline where you survive any potentially fatal event. And since you can only experience realities where you exist, your subjective experience would be one of continuous survival, no matter how improbable. Consider this. What if you're already living in that improbable timeline? What if you've already died in the most likely version of reality, and your current existence is just a thin, unlikely branch of the cosmic tree? Perhaps you should have died years ago in that near-miss car accident, or when you had that high fever as a child, or during that surgery where complications arose but were miraculously resolved. What if those weren't miracles or luck, but evidence that you're already living in the quantum afterlife? A consciousness that refuses to experience its own annihilation, forever shifting to increasingly improbable timelines where you somehow survive? The true horror of quantum immortality isn't just that you might never experience death. It's that you might be forced to experience everything else. As the timelines where you survive become increasingly improbable, your existence could become progressively more bizarre, lonely, or painful. You might outlive everyone you love. You might continue existing through disasters that kill everyone else. You might persist through medical catastrophes that should kill you but somehow don't, leaving you trapped in a broken body, or a failing mind that just won't release you to the peace of non-existence. The monitor beside your hospital bed beeps steadily, counting down the rhythms of a life suspended between worlds. Families shuffle in and out, their voices distant echoes that barely register in your consciousness. You've been in this coma for months now, the result of an accident your mind has conveniently erased. The doctors discuss your case in hushed tones outside your room, using words like persistent vegetative state and minimal brain activity. They don't know that inside your mind, you're living an entire life, the one you're experiencing right now. If we accept the third possibility, that our reality is a simulation, then we must also accept all the implications that come with it. Your entire existence might be a program running on some unfathomable computer. Your memories, your relationships, your triumphs and losses, all of them carefully coded experiences with no physical reality. And what happens when the physical you, the real you that exists outside the simulation, dies? Does your simulation continue running? Does it get archived somewhere, your consciousness frozen at the moment of disconnection? Or is it simply terminated, with you none the wiser? Consider an even more disturbing possibility. What if this simulation isn't being run for entertainment or scientific purposes, but as a form of afterlife technology? Perhaps the real you has already died, and what you're experiencing now is a post-death simulation based on your brain's final patterns. Ancient Egyptians preserved bodies. Perhaps our descendants preserve consciousness, uploading minds into vast computational networks, where the formerly living can continue to exist in virtual realities indistinguishable from actual life. The concept appears throughout human mythology, though not always in technological terms. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the bardo, an intermediate state between death and rebirth, where the soul experiences vivid hallucinations before either achieving liberation or returning to the wheel of rebirth. The Norse spoke of warriors living forever in Valhalla. Christians envision heaven or hell as eternal destinations. What if all these afterlife concepts were intuiting the same truth, that consciousness continues after physical death, not in some supernatural realm, but in a simulated reality designed to contain it? Instead of harps and clouds, your heaven is this mundane existence you call life. You died years ago. This is what came next. Time doesn't flow like a river. It circles like a snake, eating its own tail. Friedrich Nietzsche proposed the concept of eternal recurrence, the idea that existence recurs in an infinite cycle, with all matter eventually returning to precisely the same state it once held, repeating the same events eternally. This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, he wrote in The Gay Science. His words weren't meant as comfort but as an existential challenge, a thought experiment to test one's relationship with life itself. But what if Nietzsche's philosophical concept is actually the literal structure of reality? What if death isn't an ending but merely a transition point in a cycle you've repeated countless times before and will repeat countless times again? Each time you reach the end, you loop back to the beginning, with no memory of previous iterations. Your birth, your childhood, this very moment reading these words. You've experienced all of it before, innumerable times, trapped in a cosmic loop with no exit. The physics might actually support this nightmarish scenario. In an infinite universe, or multiverse, with finite possible particle arrangements, given enough time and space, every possible configuration must eventually repeat. Poincaré's recurrence theory suggests that any system will, after a sufficiently long but finite time, return to a state very close to its initial state. If the universe is infinite but matter is finite, then everything that can happen will happen, not just once, but an infinite number of times. Imagine the weight of this realization. Nothing you do matters in any final sense because it's all been done before and will be done again. Every choice you think you're making for the first time has already been made by you trillions upon trillions of times. Your seemingly unique life is just one iteration in an endless playback loop. You've already died countless deaths, only to be reborn into the same life, following the same path, making the same decisions, experiencing the same joys and sufferings. Free will becomes an illusion within the prison of recurrence. And yet, perhaps the most disturbing aspect of eternal recurrence isn't the repetition itself, but the false perception of novelty. Each time you experience this life, it feels brand new. Each pain cuts as deeply as the first time. Each love feels as fresh and surprising. You never evolve or escape because you never retain the wisdom from previous cycles. You are perpetually dying and being reborn into the same life, with the same constraints and outcomes, forever believing it's your only life, your only chance, when in truth, it's merely one frame in an infinite, unchanging film loop. Does this awareness change anything? Can you break the cycle? Perhaps not. But Nietzsche suggested that the proper response to eternal recurrence isn't despair but affirmation, amor fati, the love of fate. If you must live this exact life infinitely, then the only liberation might be to embrace it so completely that the repetition becomes not a prison but a chosen destiny. Perhaps this is why you're encountering these ideas now. In this particular loop, you're finally becoming conscious of the cycle, not to escape it, but to fully inhabit it for the first time. Lightning flashes across the night sky as rain hammers against the laboratory windows. Inside, machines hum with quiet efficiency, maintaining the precise environmental conditions needed for their precious cargo. In the center of the room sits a transparent tank filled with nutrient-rich fluid, and suspended within it, a human brain. Electrodes and hair-thin wires connect it to a massive computer system that feeds it a continuous stream of electrical signals, creating a perfect simulation of sensory input. The brain doesn't know it's been removed from its body. It doesn't realize that the life it thinks it's living is nothing but a program designed to keep it stable and functioning. that brain might be yours. The brain in a vat thought experiment has haunted philosophy for decades. Made famous by Hilary Putnam and later popularized in films like The Matrix, it poses a simple question. If your brain were removed from your body, placed in a vat of life, sustaining liquid, and connected to a supercomputer that provides electrical impulses identical to those your brain normally receives, how would you know the difference? The disturbing answer is that you wouldn't. You couldn't. Your subjective experience would continue uninterrupted, the artificial reality indistinguishable from what you previously considered real. But let's take this classic thought experiment a step further into truly unsettling territory. What if this procedure wasn't performed while you were alive? What if it happened after clinical death? Medical science continues to push the boundaries of what death actually means. We now know that brain cells don't die immediately when the heart stops. They enter a period of rapid deterioration, but remain potentially viable for minutes, sometimes longer under the right conditions. What if future technology could harvest a brain during this critical window, preserving its neural architecture before degradation becomes irreversible? Your body died in an accident 3 years ago. The paramedics couldn't save you. Your heart had stopped, your lungs no longer drew breath. But a new medical protocol, one you unknowingly consented to when you checked a box on your driver's license, allowed them to rapidly cool your brain and transport it to a facility where it was removed and placed in an experimental life support system. Your loved ones mourned at your funeral, unaware that your consciousness lived on, experiencing a simulated continuation of your life, unaware that anything had changed. The ethical implications are staggering. Is this resurrection or torture? Is it an extension of life or a mockery of death? What rights does a disembodied consciousness have? Can it consent to its continued existence? Would you want to know the truth if you were that brain? Or would the revelation that your body is long dead, that your friends and family have moved on, that everything you think you're experiencing is an elaborate fiction, be a form of psychological torture worse than simply letting your consciousness fade away naturally? Perhaps the most insidious aspect of this scenario is that it renders death itself ambiguous. If consciousness can be sustained artificially after bodily death, what does it mean to die? If your experience continues uninterrupted, are you really dead at all? Or are you caught in a liminal state, technically deceased by traditional definitions, yet subjectively alive in every way that matters to you? The line between life extension and artificial afterlife blurs into meaninglessness. And here's the thought that might keep you awake tonight. How would you prove, with absolute certainty, that this isn't what has already happened to you? The drowning man's life flashed before his eyes. This phrase has become such a cliché that we rarely stop to consider its implications. Numerous near-death survivors report experiencing a rapid, panoramic review of their entire lives in the moments before expected death. Time seems to stretch, memories cascade, and an entire lifetime can seemingly be relived in seconds of objective time. Neurologists attribute this to the brain's release of chemicals like DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and the hyperactivation of memory centers during extreme stress. A last desperate flourish of neural activity as oxygen levels plummet. But what if this phenomenon isn't just a curious side effect of a brain in crisis? What if it's the key to understanding your entire existence? Consider this possibility. You are actually in the final moments of your life right now. Perhaps you're drowning after a boating accident, or lying on pavement after a catastrophic car crash, or taking your final labored breaths in a hospital bed decades from now. Your brain, facing imminent shutdown, has launched into that panoramic life review, but with a twist. Instead of passively reviewing memories, you're re-experiencing your entire life in a fabricated present tense, complete with the illusion of making new decisions and having new experiences. The scientific foundation for this idea isn't entirely far-fetched. Our perception is remarkably elastic. Under the influence of certain drugs, during traumatic events, or in dream states, our subjective experience of time can radically diverge from objective clock time. Dreams that seem to span hours can occur during brief REM cycles lasting minutes or even seconds. The brain is extraordinarily adept at constructing convincing temporal narratives disconnected from external time. Israeli neurologist Avi Mendelssohn's research has shown that the hippocampus, a brain region crucial for memory, processes memories in a fraction of the time it took to experience the original events. Some estimates suggest the brain could theoretically process years of memories in mere minutes of actual time. If the dying brain were to reconstruct your life not as a passive montage, but as a fully immersive, experiential replay, complete with the sensation of making new choices and having novel thoughts, how would you know? The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard wrote about simulacra, copies with no original. What if your current experience is precisely this? A simulation with no external referent, a dream that believes itself to be waking life. Every decision you think you're making, every new experience you believe you're having, every word you're reading right now, all of it might be a complex neural fabrication occurring in the milliseconds before brain death, an elaborate hallucination produced by a mind that can't accept its own ending. What makes this theory particularly disturbing is its unfalsifiability. If your entire current experience is occurring within a dying dream, there would be no way to prove or disprove it from within that experience. Any evidence you might gather, any scientific tests you might perform, any logical arguments you might construct, would all be part of the same dream, subject to the same deception. You can't step outside your subjective experience to verify its relationship to objective reality. Your life might be genuine, or it might be the last gasp of a dying consciousness, and both possibilities would feel identical from the inside. If this theory is true, then perhaps death isn't something waiting for you in the future. It's something happening to you right now, the true context of your existence. You aren't moving toward death. You're already in it, experiencing your life not as it unfolds in real time, but as a compressed recollection in your final moments. You were already dead before you began reading these words. She vanished the moment you looked away. You'd been talking to her for nearly 20 minutes, the barista with the geometric tattoo wrapping around her forearm. She'd made your coffee with practiced precision, asked about your day, laughed at your joke about the weather. But when you turned to grab a napkin and looked back, someone else stood in her place. A tall man with a close-cropped beard who insisted he'd been working alone all morning. The other customers continued their conversations, unperturbed, as though nothing unusual had happened. No one remembered seeing the woman who'd just been speaking to you. This hasn't been the first incident. Last month, your childhood friend canceled dinner plans at the last minute, then denied ever making them. Your mother referred to a family vacation that never happened. Your coworker failed to recall a project you'd collaborated on for weeks. Small inconsistencies at first, easily dismissed as misunderstandings or lapses in memory. But they've been increasing in frequency and significance, haven't they? The world around you seems increasingly unstable, as though reality itself is coming undone at the seams. Perhaps the most terrifying interpretation of these anomalies is this: everyone else is already gone. You died, perhaps recently, perhaps long ago, and what remains is a fading echo of consciousness, a lonely ghost trying to maintain the illusion of a populated world. The people you interact with aren't truly there. They're projections created by your mind, increasingly unstable simulations that glitch and malfunction as your post-death consciousness begins to dissolve. Philosophers have long grappled with solipsism, the idea that only one's own mind can be known to exist with certainty. Everything external might be an illusion, a dream, a fabrication. But what if solipsism isn't just a philosophical puzzle, but your literal condition? What if you are truly alone in a decaying mental landscape, a consciousness without a body or a world, clinging to fragments of memory that slip away like sand through fingers? The psychological horror of this scenario surpasses mere death. It suggests that not only have you died, but in some sense, you've taken the entire world with you. Your death wasn't just the end of your participation in reality, but the end of reality itself, at least from your perspective. What you experience now is just the residue of consciousness, a system running on backup power, gradually losing cohesion as it approaches final shutdown. This interpretation might explain certain persistent feelings you've had throughout your life. That nagging sense of disconnection from others, the occasional feeling that the world isn't quite solid or real, those moments of déjà vu or jamais vu that momentarily shatter your continuity of experience. These weren't psychological quirks or neurological hiccups. They were glimpses of your true condition, moments when the illusion briefly thinned enough for you to sense what lies beneath. Look closely at the people around you. Watch for the moments when they seem to forget their own histories, when their behaviors become inconsistent, when they appear as mere sketches rather than fully realized beings. Listen for the repetitive patterns in their speech, the limited range of their responses. These aren't failures of human nature, but glitches in your mind's increasingly desperate attempt to populate your solitary afterlife with the comforting illusion of companionship. The true terror isn't that you might die someday. It's that you already have, and this fading simulation is all that remains of what you once called reality. Three days after his funeral, David Morgan sits at his kitchen table drinking coffee. The mug is warm against his palms, a small, concrete sensation in a world that suddenly feels insubstantial. Last Tuesday, driving home in heavy rain, his car hydroplaned on the highway, spinning across 3 lanes before smashing into the concrete barrier. The paramedics declared him dead at the scene. His wife identified his body. His children wept at his funeral. Yet here he sits, uninjured, alive, in a world indistinguishable from the one he's always known, except for one crucial detail. In this branch of reality, his car regained traction at the last possible moment. He swerved, heart pounding, and continued home safely. No accident, no death, no funeral. In this timeline, David Morgan survived. But he doesn't feel like a survivor. He feels like a ghost, haunting a parallel world where his existence makes no sense. Somewhere else, somewhere more real, more probable, his true self lies buried, and his family mourns. This version of him feels counterfeit, an improbable statistical anomaly that should never have occurred. This disorientation, this existential vertigo, is the psychological reality of quantum immortality. If these theories hold any truth, then the true challenge isn't confronting death but reconciling ourselves to these improbable survivals, these uncanny aftermaths, where we continue in timelines increasingly distant from what should have been. Perhaps you've felt it yourself, that strange sense of borrowed time after a near-miss accident, the unsettling feeling after recovering from an illness that should have been fatal, the vague suspicion that you're living in the wrong timeline, that somewhere else you actually died years ago, and this continuation is merely a bizarre cosmic footnote. These aren't just philosophical abstractions. They're the lived psychological experience of quantum mortality. What meaning can be found in such an existence? If you're already dead in the most probable timelines, if your current consciousness is merely an edge case in the vast probability space of the universe, what significance can your actions possibly have? Why strive? Why create? Why love in a reality that's essentially a cosmic accident? Perhaps the answer lies not in certainty, but in radical acceptance. Whether we're living in post-death simulations, quantum branch points, eternal recurrences, or brain-in-vat scenarios, our subjective experience remains the locus of all meaning. If this moment, however it's generated, whatever its ontological status, is all we can access with certainty, then perhaps it demands our full presence precisely because of its mysterious nature. The ancient Stoics practiced memento mori, remember that you will die, as a way to bring urgency and appreciation to life. But perhaps what these theories suggest is a more radical practice, memento vivere. Remember that you live, despite all probabilities, despite all rational expectations, despite the fact that in countless other branches of reality, you don't. Your existence in this moment is the ultimate statistical anomaly, a cosmic miracle regardless of its true nature. If you're reading these words, you exist. That simple fact, regardless of whether you're a simulation, a branch point consciousness, a brain in a vat, or a dying dream, remains the foundation of all possible meaning. You experience. You think. You feel. The mystery isn't that you might already be dead in some technical sense. The mystery is that despite everything, you are, in this moment, undeniably alive. And perhaps that's the final twist in this exploration of death and consciousness. The recognition that even the most disturbing theories about our posthumous existence ultimately return us to the same fundamental challenge: to find meaning and purpose in the raw fact of our awareness, to create value within the experience we're having, whatever its true nature might be. Whether you died years ago or are yet to die, whether this reality is primary or derivative, genuine or simulated, this moment of consciousness is the only certainty you have. It's what you do with that certainty that matters.